Amen. Our dear friend Chuck, give Chuck a hand.
Thank you, sir.
Chuck, you've presented, I think, almost every semester that we've been doing this. And this is, so 5 presentations over 2 years, always good material, always challenging. And so thank you for being here.
Oh, my privilege. Thank you. All right. Okay, so what I want you to do, first of all, is stand up, and I want you to face your spouse. All right? Stand up and face your spouse, and if you don't have a partner here, find someone in another table, because I know there's a couple of single guys hanging out over here. But find someone and choose who's going to be the wife, all right? Because I'm going to ask wives to do something, all right? So stand face to face. Can you find someone there? If not, that's okay. If you don't find someone, just watch, okay? And you'll learn by watching, all right? So face each other, put your fists together with your elbows bent. Okay, you guys are holding hands. That's okay. I like to see that, but fists together, hold it. Okay, ready? Okay, wives, I want you to listen to me, okay? Wives, look at me, listen to me. Okay, look at your husband right now. Okay, wives, listen to what I'm saying. Push as hard as you can. Push him over. Come on, push. Come on. All right. Nobody's pushing you. All right, you're safe. All right, everybody sit down. Okay. Okay. So tell me, what was that like? What was that like? And how was that like life in, real life and unlike real life? Somebody quickly, just, what was it like and how's it like real life? All right, the harder she pushed, the more I push back. Someone else. What's that? You caught him off guard. Woo! All right. What's that? Why are you pushing me? Right. Okay, so it's kind of like real life. We either dig in when we're pushed, or we give in. Some of you I saw just went like this and gave in, right? Some of you dug in and pushed back, right? And what's the problem with either of these reactions in real life? Puts you on defense, or if you're just leaving the conversation and detaching, not getting anywhere, right? Both of these reactions puts safety in jeopardy. And whenever the relationship, the space between you doesn't feel safe, nothing can happen in your relationship. And as we've talked about over and over again through the class, that everything in the relationship is about connection. When I feel connected with my spouse, everything works. When I don't feel connected, nothing works. And I cannot connect with my spouse unless I feel safe. So either being violent and exploding with anger and emotion, or leaving the room, walking out of the conversation. Either of those two reactions puts safety in jeopardy, and nothing can happen. So what happens if I don't control my anger? Talk about the person that was pushing. Now, in this case, the wife was pushing, right? When I blow up, what happens if I don't control my anger? First of all, James says, "Know this, my beloved brother, let everyone be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." The unbridled expression and explosion of emotion outwardly will never accomplish what God desires. So, what happens if I don't control my anger? I make it unsafe for my partner. As I said, then feeling connected is not possible. And then conversations are shut down. And I'm either met with an angry response or a withdrawal and disconnection. All right? So what happens if I go the opposite way? What happens if I'm not the hailstorm in the relationship, but I'm the turtle and I pull into my shell when I feel unsafe? What happens? Proverbs says a soft answer turns away wrath. It doesn't say silence turns away wrath. But it says that when someone's angry in a relationship, there needs to be an appropriate response. A response that will calm things down and bring restored safety to the relationship. So silence is never silent, and the feelings that I have don't go away. See, if I choose to be nice, now this is a good question, isn't it? Because the turtle in the relationship is the one who's always the nice guy or the nice woman, right? I mean, I don't like conflict, so I'm going to avoid it at all costs. What happens when I do that? When I'm nice rather than honest? Feelings don't go away. I can internalize them and live with that anger internalized, and that's what causes bitterness and depression. Or, I internalize it and then I explode over something small, something insignificant. And then my spouse never gets to know me because I've just been very adept at hiding my emotions, keeping them to myself, and not really disclosing. And then I keep having the same problems because someone said, we don't get anywhere, right? It's true. And then I rob myself and my spouse a chance to grow. So here's another exercise, and I'm not going to have you do it for lack of time, but you've got it in your notes, and I would encourage you to do it on your own, just as an assignment. And it's called the left-hand column, and it's designed by Dr. Chris Argyris from Harvard University. And what actually you do is you recall a conversation that left you feeling frustrated. Then you write down in the right-hand column what was said. My wife said this, I said this, my wife said this, I said this. And then after that, you go to the left-hand column, and then you chart all of the feelings and thoughts that weren't shared, that you were feeling and you were thinking, but you were not saying. Okay? So here's what happened. And so let me encourage you to do that. Sandy and I, my wife, when I did this, and here's the way it went. What I said was, or Sandy said one Saturday morning, I'll never forget, Saturday morning, honey, would you fix the fence? I said, I fixed it last weekend, or didn't you notice? Yeah. She said, you nailed a board over it. It's not fixed. I said, well, you don't have to worry about the dog getting out. We can redo it later, but for now it's fixed. All I want to do is, no, never mind, I'll tell you. See, lots being said over here, lots being thought, but not being said, right? So she says, fine, I'll just call a contractor. Woo, boy. Can you imagine living in a having conversations like that? And Sandy and I had those for years, and we just slept on it and sat on it. And so this was really helpful when we went back and we said, okay, that Saturday morning, we both remembered it. And we said, okay, Sandy, what were you thinking? Honey, could you fix the fence? Yes? There it is. Why do I always have to initiate getting anything done around here? Right? So I said, I fixed it last weekend, or didn't you notice? I felt like she's never satisfied. So she said, you nailed a board over it. It's not fixed. Sandy's thinking, are you kidding? Why couldn't I have married someone with some useful skills? Oh. So I said, look, you don't have to worry about the dog getting out. We can redo it later, but for now, it's fixed. I'm thinking, I'm so sick of her being so controlling. I'm not doing that today. I just want to watch the game. So So Sandy says, fine, I'll just call a contractor. And here's where it gets really personal. And you know, those of you who followed us in doing the Imago Safe Conversations dialogue, we know how we get to that when we're upset, 90% of that is about something that's happened in the past, particularly in my childhood, things that happened. And there was a connection. And this is where it got really personal with Sandy. She said, I'll show you. I don't even need you. It's just like when I was little and no one was really there. Wow. Can you imagine living in a relationship like that? I can, because I did. And that's why these skills became so important to me to learn. And today we're going to talk about, I don't have my computer here, so I can't read my notes. Forgive me for looking back here. So Brene Brown says, daring leaders who live into their values are never silent about hard things. And so what I want to talk about first is controlling yourself, because self-control is really all we have. And that's a big issue when you're triggered in your emotions in a relationship. It's a big issue. How do I control my reaction? I cannot control my spouse. Most of the times when people come to me for counseling, they're looking for how can they change their spouse? How can they get their spouse to do what they perceive they need? Right? I can't control my spouse. I can only control myself. But if I do that, I can influence my spouse powerfully. So this next section, we're kind of, we do the dialogues for practice to build new brain pathways. But today I'm going to show you a skill that I learned from a book called Crucial Conversations. This is a derivative from that. It's not exactly the same, but it's a derivative from a book called Crucial Conversation. Very good book. And so what we learn from the brain science is that we see something, and then we feel an emotional reaction, and then we act on those feelings. You notice that? Where I see and hear something, that triggers a feeling, an emotion, and that emotion is what drives my behavior. That's what we call a path to action. And we as Christians, we say, well, we don't go by feelings, we go by fact. Right. I wish that were true, but so what happens when one wife said to her husband, when you rolled your eyes at me when I was struggling with my phone, I felt angry and blew up at you in front of our friends. So here's a wife who has issues of feeling stupid because she has struggles with the technology, and her husband constantly does little things that make her feel that way, right? So what is it? She saw him roll his eyes. It triggered a feeling of anger, and she blew up in front of their friends. So, but what we don't realize is that in between this seeing and hearing something and the emotional reaction we immediately feel, in a millisecond, there's something else that happens. Who can tell me what that is? Memory. Well, it's the story that I tell myself about what I saw. Okay? So before an emotional response, we tell a story about what happened. So the emotional reaction is not because of what happened, but because the meaning we attach to what happened, the story we tell about it. So what happened? I saw and heard something, then I have an interpretation of those facts, and then I have feelings that are brought about not by the facts themselves, but by the story I'm telling, and that's what drives my behavior, either to safety or positivity or negativity. And so 10 people in the room can tell 10 different stories about what happened. And the idea is if I change my story, or at least if I can hold my story tentatively while I get the rest of the story, I can control my emotion. I can control my emotional reaction. So if we change our story, we can change our emotions. If we hold our story tentative, we can control our emotions. All right? Okay, so the first skill that we're going to learn today is we're going to learn to separate facts from stories. All right? So what is a fact? A fact is an actual occurrence, something that can be proven through observation. A fact is something you saw versus what you thought about what you saw. Okay? So think about it. If you had a video camera with sound You can see, what you hear, those are the facts, right? So how are stories different from facts? Well, stories put you in that judgment chair, right? Stories give you conclusions about what's being said. Stories have attributes. You attribute motive to the person and why they're doing what they're doing. Those are the stories you tell about the facts. So let me just ask this real quickly, and we can walk around here. Okay, let me go here so I can read it with you. So, fact or story? He was really disrespectful. Fact, story, fact, story. Okay. What about she went into the kitchen and pouted like a child? Both. Fact, story, fact, story. Okay. What about she scowled at me? Fact. Both. Fact, 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 fact. What about he was very controlling? Story. He jumped down my throat. Story. She was afraid of where the conversation was going. Oh, we're getting now to the story. He became very aggressive. Fact, story, fact. Okay. She abandoned me in the middle of the conversation. Fact, story, fact. Woo, we're confused, aren't we? I'm making it worse. Okay, so the reality is all of these are stories. They're all stories. You say, but that's a fact. It could be a true story. He was very controlling. That could be true. She scowled at me. It could be true. But no, the fact is I saw her face turn. There was a young executive he was a team leader making a presentation and to a broader group. And as he was making the presentation, the vice president of the company walked in, and she stood back next to the door against the wall like this and just listened. He was totally surprised and shocked. He was just like, oh my goodness. And all of a sudden she starts scowling, her face, and he's thinking, he's getting nervous and, she doesn't like what I say. And he was just frazzled, right? And then she abruptly rolled her eyes and walked out of the room. And so he said, I'm dealing with this. So he walked down to her office and said, excuse me, but you walked in and blah, blah, blah. And he talked about her reaction, and she says, oh yeah, I was struggling with my contact lens, and eventually I had to take it out and go to the bathroom and clean, nothing to do with what he thought. It's the facts. She wasn't scowling. Her face was making some movements in this way and that way. You can describe the facts, but the story he told is what got him in trouble. Right? So here we go. Facts are, his face turned red. He raised his finger. He looked away and never spoke again. She raised her voice. Those are all facts. Stories are, my husband is dishonest. My wife is really needy. He was being impatient with me. My spouse is unreliable. All stories. Right? So when we tend to believe the stories we tell are fact. And then if we realize the same number of facts could be used to tell an infinite number of stories, we can separate our stories from the facts and then suspend judgment in order to open our minds to alternative stories. When you give up your certainty about your story, you can create emotions that will lead you to a better result. Remember, we talked about in the dialogue process, that's a skill to help you create zero negativity. We need zero negativity. Remember, our goal in marriage is connection, not just conflict resolution. Because if conflict resolution leaves us disconnected, it doesn't work. Many times in our marriage, what we're doing is we are managing distance rather than having connection as the goal. A wife will be terrified of intimacy, and she's just disconnected from her husband, and they're not connected. But then she'll say, well, let's make popcorn and sit on the sofa and watch a movie together. Why? Because that makes her have a little feeling of being a little bit connected, but not too connected, you see. Why? Because she doesn't feel safe. So if we fall short of a connection that leads to a sense of passion and full aliveness together, we're settling for less. So we want to keep that as our goal as we go through this little skill we're learning here. So So what we're going to do is we're going to learn to talk in a way that influences rather than offends. And here's the way we're going to do it. First of all, we're going to state the facts. Second, we're going to share our story. And third, we're going to ask a question. All right? So I want you to say that with me. The three. Let me say it first, and then you say it. Facts, story, question. Okay, say it. Facts, story, question. All right, those three. So what I'm going to do is state what I heard. This is the way I'm going to make the confrontation. I'm going to say what I saw and heard. This is what I saw or heard, and then I'm going to tell my story. This makes me begin to wonder if, and then you end with a question that invites dialogue. Is that what's happening, or am I missing something? Right? Why start with facts? Because facts are less controversial. Facts build a foundation of shared perspective. Facts are more persuasive. Facts are least insulting. Starting with feelings or stories often keeps us from the facts, right? When you lead with your story, you create a reaction, and you never really get to the facts sometimes. So facts are least insulting. I'm going to share some illustrations or stories about how that works. It doesn't always work. Why? Because when you start to tell your spouse the facts, he's going to see what's coming, and he may react anyway, right? You may react. But we're going to have a much better chance of making the confrontation a very positive thing if we start with facts, then tell our story. So let's do another drill again just to make sure you got this. I can't trust you. Fact or story? Very good. Okay, the facts would be you said you would pick up our daughter at 6 p.m. and you arrived at 6:15. Fact. Okay, that's the fact. But the story is I can't trust you. You never listen to me. Story. Okay, what would be the facts? When we were talking, you checked your phone 2 times. Fact. You're so controlling and it's driving me nuts. Story. Fact. You asked me to write our Christmas letter, but then you ended up writing it yourself. Fact. Right. Okay. You see where this is going? So you also, with the facts, you might include what your expectation was. Like, for instance, you said you would be here at 8. It's now 8:20. Facts. And my expectation, if you include the expectation, then it's helpful sometimes. So start with facts. And here's some language you can use. This is in your notes, so you've got it on the slide there. But let me encourage you to sort of incorporate this language because it's helpful to have language. I noticed that. Last 3 times we talked about this. I was expecting the kitchen to be cleaned up last night, and the dishes are still on the counter this morning. Facts. Okay? So learn how to construct, and it'll take some practice, but once you get it, it becomes quite natural for you to do it. Can you think of others? Think of them, write them down, all right? So facts, and then tell your story. Why tell your story? Because facts by themselves don't communicate your concerns. Listen, my story is my story. If I have a situation and I see drug paraphernalia in one of my kids' drawers, the sock drawer or something, the story I'm telling you about that is very important. See, it's not that my story is that I need to throw it out. My story is all I bring to this relationship, right? But how I confront it, we'll talk about how to confront that situation using this skill, right? So facts themselves don't communicate your concerns. You share your story to communicate why the facts are a concern to you, and so that's why you tell your story. Use these kinds of languages. It helps. This kind of language. This makes me wonder if, or when I see this, I start thinking that, or it leads me to conclude that, or things like, can you help me understand? These are helpful because then you're. That's a question. It leads me to conclude that. And then finally, so facts, say it again, facts, story, question, all right? Then finally, the question. End in a way that gets you into dialogue. When you make a confrontation, you want to end in a way where you're talking, not where one person's shutting down. The wives were pushing against their husbands and their husbands were pushing back. That's the way we do it when we confront in a way that makes it unsafe. And we get nowhere. So end your point of view with an invitation for the other person to express theirs. So here's Chuck and Sandy again, right? Last Tuesday, you asked me to take out all the dead tomato vines from our garden. This morning, that was like last Tuesday, right? Saturday morning, this morning, I went out and I looked and saw that you'd already taken them out. Facts. So Sandy says, what's your point? Well, I'm not sure if you're trying to send this message, but I'm beginning to wonder if you don't trust me. Maybe you think I'll forget, or you don't think I'll see it as a priority. And then, what's the last one? Question. Is that what's going on, or am I missing something? See how smooth that is? I'm confronting it. I'm gonna deal with it, man. I mean, I'm not gonna let this sit. And I'm a turtle, so I'm learning. I've been learning for years, and I've been moving at the pace of a turtle, learning. But I'm learning, right? So Sandy said, actually, I realized you had a lot on your plate lately, so I just had some time later in the week, so I just went out and did it, took them out. Oh, okay. Now that was a real conversation that happened well because I used my skills instead of that whole thing about being so controlling and everything. Whew. That's the story I tell, see, but it's not what's going on. Many times, some of you have a spouse, you feel like, why is he or why is she so controlling? Every one of us is trying to manage our anxiety the best we can. And some people, when they get into anxiety, and they get anxious, they go into production mode and they start, I don't like to say it this way, but barking orders. Or that's what it feels like, right? That's the way you're experiencing them. But in their mind, they're just trying to manage anxiety. And so empathy is really key to see, oh, yeah, it makes sense. And validation, remember those skills we learned? Okay. So what's effective is questions like, is that what's happening, or am I missing something? Or can you help me understand? Or what's your view on this? Ineffective questions are those closed questions like, isn't this the case? Yes or no? Or what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Or no one disagrees with that, do they? See, those questions are those. Sometimes questions are bad because they corner someone and they create reactivity. It's not safe, doesn't feel safe. But there are questions that help you feel safe. So why ask the question? Well, in order to get the best data to draw from, everybody needs to share their view. So you've shared yours, you ask for others to do the same, right? And Ron McMillan says, he's one of the authors of the Crucial Conversations book, he says, you can argue as strongly as you want for your opinions as long as you are equally vigorous in encouraging others to disagree and to share their perspective. That way, it's safer, right? All right. So then now, how do I introduce it? How do I tee up the ball, right? How do I introduce it? And again, language is important. I use an invitation that reflects my commitment to mutual purpose. Next week, we're going to talk about the power of mutual purpose and how to work out a mutual purpose when your purposes are crossed and you're in conflict and it doesn't feel safe. We're going to learn that next week. But using an invitation that reflects your commitment to mutual purpose, being an advocate for your partner as well, rather than just your perspective. And so I use this one. Hey, I was wondering, could we talk about something that I believe is important to both of us? Now you might say, well, Sandy doesn't feel that. Well, no, it's important to both of us because it's about our relationship. It has to do, the impact of this confrontation is going to affect our relationship. So it is important to both of us. I'm not just thinking of myself here. I'm thinking of us. Right? Okay? So here's what I want you to do. You've got the skill now. We're going to work it out. We're going to try it out. Okay? So I want you to stand up in And let's see, I want you to get in at least two couples together, 4 people. And I want you to just gather in groups of 4. And then what you're going to do is you're going to label one person facts, one person story, and one person question. And then the 4th person's going to be the one that gets confronted by this creepy 3-headed spouse. All right? All right? So if you're at a table and you're by yourself, find a group to be with, a group of 4, or just like you did last time, watch the action, right? But we're all going to learn from. So stand up, form groups of 4, and then 3 of you decide who's going to be fact, who's going to be story, and who's going to be question. Okay, you're ready, huh? Okay. So you decided? You got us. Hey, Heidi, how are you? Good to see you. Gonna find a place there? All right. Okay. So facts. Okay, got it? Everybody over here? Facts, story, question, and the person that's being confronted, right? The spouse. What's that? Oh, you did? Yeah. Okay. All right, ready? Now what I want you to do is look at the problem. So facts, who's facts? Raise your hand. All the facts, raise your hand. Okay, you got facts over here? All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, I saw, I heard, I noticed. You're going to tell the facts. Okay, raise your hand if you're story. Story, okay, you're going to say, I'm starting to think, it seems to me that, I'm wondering if, okay. And then question, who's the question? Raise your hand, question. Okay, question, your role is very, very simple. You ask the question, is that what's happening, or am I missing something? Or something like that, okay? You ready? Okay, here's the issue. Your spouse has said she will be home by 6 p.m., so you can have dinner as a family. Over the past 2 weeks, there have been 3 nights where he or she has come home past 7 without a call or text. You've been walking on eggshells about it for days, but now it's time to clear the air. So plan your caring confrontation looking at that, facts, story, question. And then the poor guy standing who's the poor? All right, okay, you're going to get it, all right? Okay, so go. Plan it and do it. Yes. So yeah, well, just do it, and then when you're done, you're done. Right. So you want to illustrate? You have to demonstrate this way. Okay. So. Okay, is everybody done? Okay, everybody got it? You did it? All right, okay, everybody have a seat then when you're done. Okay. All right. Okay, so guys, you want to come up and you want to do it for us? Just to run us through it. Okay. All right. So everyone, we're going to just have one of you guys come up, one of the groups come up and come on facts, story, and question, and come on the spouse that's getting confronted. All right. Okay. So, all right. Let's have it. Let's hear a graphic illustration. Come on over. Where the yeah. Okay. Okay. So who's facts? Whose story? And whose question? Okay, so you come over here. You're gonna come over here. Yes. Okay, so all right, so here we go. Let's hear it.
So the fact is, I've been noticing you've been arriving more late than usual.
That's good.
I've been trying to get the kids together so we could have dinner as a family. I'm wondering if you care.
Can you help me understand how this happened?
All right. All right, good. Okay, good. Now see that story was pretty much boom. You know, I tend to be a little softer than that, but not. Listen. Some of you avoid conflict like a turtle, like me. Some of you, conflict is your middle name. You rise to the occasion. You love a fight, right? And so what this skill is supposed to help those people do is soften it and first tell the facts, lead with the story, and then be open, right? So if you tend to be overly aggressive, this will help you make it safe for your partner. But if you tend to be running scared of conflict, I don't want to cause a problem, I don't want to cause a conflict, this is going to help you be bold and courageous, and you're going to step into it, man. You're going to clear the air. We're going to deal with this, right? Why? Because I got some skills, baby. That's what I'm talking about, all right? All right. Okay. So what was your experience? Let me walk around and what was your experience?
One of the things that came up in our group, which I really liked, was a real example of starting with the story versus the fact. And what was said was this spouse said to his other spouse, he said to his spouse, what are 2 things that I can be doing for you this week? But because she started with that, the spouse turned it around and said, well, are you going to make me do 2 things that I have to do this week? And so what he said was, if I would have started with my story and told her, or started with my fact and then go into the story, it would have been perceived a lot better.
Wow. Yeah. That's good. Did you get that? Because just that tone of voice or whatever the history is there triggered a reaction. But if it started with facts, what would the facts be? Something like, I've been noticing you have frustrations with the leaky faucet and some other things, and it makes me wonder if you'd like for me to do some things. That would be different, right? Someone else.
Okay, so you start the conversation out by, honey, can we talk about something that might be important to you? And the turtle, both of us, and the turtle goes, oh God, she wants to talk.
Right. And what we said is that the turtle will see, oh no, it's coming. Right? That you can't help that. But you can help because your commitment is to being an advocate, safety, connection, mutual purpose in this. But I also want to get what I want for myself, for my spouse, for our relationship, and for our family. I have all those things in mind. It's not just about me. I want what I want because of us, right? So as you practice that in the culture, and develop a culture that, then the turtle's going to feel safer. You see, but you got a point, because that turtle's going to smell it coming and be defensive immediately. But you're going to have a better chance if you start with facts, story, and I'll tell you a true story in just a moment. Someone else? Yes.
So I observed the importance of doing the story and the question really close together and not leave any room in between. Because when in our practice, because we have the 3 different people, so the story person goes, I'm beginning to think that you don't care about family dinner. And then the person who's being confronted says, I disagree. And then it's really kind of hard to follow with a question of, well, is this, am I missing something? Right? Because then it no longer becomes safe, because it's like a rebuttal. So we're like, okay, the 2 of us have to follow right after each other and then open up that room.
Right. And I would suggest using language that's, and we had that same one over here. Like, what if you were to say it like, we planned to have dinner at 6, and the last Tuesday you came home at 6:20. Thursday it was 6:15, and that makes me wonder if you're being held up at work, or if maybe you didn't get the email. We're having. Did you forget? Did you forget? Or can you help me? Am I missing something? See, it's less judgmental, less likely to create a response. However, I'm not opposed to someone telling their story if they can make it safe. Yes.
I wonder if something happened in your house. Like if I'm the one who arrived late, of course, something happened in your job. If I'm the one who arrived late, yes, of course I have to work. But on the other side, the person really want to have dinner with that person. So how that, then I have to move everyone to 7? I don't know. I was talking to Iwan about it.
Well, that's what you want. That's the information you want to get, because you have your story, but you're wanting to get the rest of the story, right? It's like if you know your husband has flexible hours or has to stay late or something, then you incorporate that into your story. Did that answer your question somewhat?
I don't know how to explain it. I think for me it's like, okay, I understand your viewpoint that you need to be late at home for dinner. And I respect that. On the other hand, if for me, if I have dinner with friends and I really agree with him in the past and he's not there, then I don't want that to happen again.
Well, in that case, you see, that's different. That's different. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. See that. Yeah. Right. See, you're not trying to resolve you're trying to confront it. You're trying to get into a conversation. You're trying to get into a dialogue. And so if he's insisting on being at 7, and he's got to work at 7, and he has reasons for that, then you change the schedule. That's a simple thing. But you say, then how can I trust him? Well, if you have the skill of confronting, you deal with these issues and you resolve it as you go. And then if we change it together. But at least we're understanding each other. And I haven't held back. Why? Because I got skills, man. I'm courageous. Right? Okay. All right. So, yeah. We need to have a conversation about the conversation at that point. Okay. Very good. Okay. So, I already shared that. It must have, okay. So listen to how Sandy shared her frustration with Chuck. I did this with her. We wrote it out, okay? So I'm reading what she wrote. So she says, how do I talk to Chuck about messes made or left in the kitchen? Usually when I point out where he left something in the sink or on the counter, it's met with defensiveness. Then accusation. Why do you have to be such a perfectionist? Loosen up. Those dishes aren't going anywhere. That's easy for him to say, but what that usually means is I end up doing them. This causes me to resent him and always be walking on eggshells when it comes to a messy kitchen. After I learned this principle, I realized I could confront this issue using my skills, and the results were great. Under our kitchen sink, we have a canister in which we put a lot of our food scraps for the compost pile. Every morning we dump the coffee grounds from our espresso machine into the canister. When Chuck does it, it tends to fly all up under the place, and once again, I'm left cleaning it up. So this was a conversation I was going to have. So I set it up with a question designed to establish a mutual purpose. Hey, sweetheart, can we talk about something I believe is a concern for both of us? He said, sure, what's up? Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, facts. I noticed there are coffee grounds all up under the counter around the compost can. He says, yes. And I had the strangest feeling, and I realized he's listening to me. He's not defensive. So I shared facts, and it worked. Story. This makes me wonder if when you're dumping them, you're missing the can. And then question. Is that what's happening? And amazingly, that question invited dialogue. And he responded rather than reacted. He said, yeah, sometimes I'm just not aware. I'll try to notice next time and hit the can. And bingo, everything changed. And since that conversation, it hasn't been a problem. Now, she wanted me to tell you, that's not always the case, right? But, and it doesn't always work as smoothly, but that was an example where it really works. So I want you to try it this week. I promised you the story about the dad who suspected he suspected his son experimenting with drugs. So he found some paraphernalia stuff in his sock drawer, and so he said, "Hey, is this a good time to talk? Can we talk about something I think is important?" And the son said, "Sure." And he said, "Hey, I was looking for something, and I was in your drawer, and I found this and this and this, whatever it was." And he said, that makes me wonder, are you experimenting with drugs? And the kid opened up. And he started talking about it. And he shared it. And they got into a dialogue. See? And so that example to me says, hey, in a crucial situation like that, you don't want to walk into your son's room and start screaming at him and telling, and judging him for that. You're going to confront it. But do it in a way that gets you into dialogue. Okay? All right. Okay, so let me tell you about Joe and the barking dog. Now that we've learned this with our spouse, then we can practice it with neighbors and anyone. I got so excited about this skill. I just started thinking, I'm just going to do this everywhere I go, right? So I see this guy breaking in line at a movie line. He's breaking in line. I'm thinking, I got skills, baby. I can go confront him. Then I thought, oh, my wife is with me. I don't want to get in a fight. It might not work, so I didn't do it. But I did go back and clean up a lot of relationships that I had never confronted. I said, I should have talked to you about this. This and this happened, and it made me wonder this. And was that what was going on? And I used it, and I just used it. So the more you use it, the more it will empower you. And I pray for you that the Lord would put this in your hand. You see, what we talk about is we want breakthroughs in our life. We want to see breakthroughs in our marriage. And the Lord is going to give us that. And I asked the question, why don't you just give it to us? And I was talking to someone about the 12-step program, right? The Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. And someone told me, well, we don't need 12 steps. We just need one step. Come to Jesus, right? Yes, but what happens when he gives you a breakthrough? If you don't have the skills to steward that breakthrough, where do you end up? You come right back to it. So you say, Lord, I want a breakthrough in my marriage. Well, he's going to give you that, but he might be waiting for you to learn a skill. If you're like me and you'd rather be nice than honest, it's time to get courageous. Get those skills, right? And step into it, right? If you're a person who blows up and you're constantly making the space between you unsafe because of your anger, this is a chance for you to step back and walk into it in a way that makes it safe for your partner to respond. Okay? So, once we learned it as a couple, we started applying it everywhere. One night, it had been the second week in a row, it was a Saturday night, and Finn, the dog, the neighbors that lived behind us, was barking. And barking Friday night till after midnight, and it was already after midnight on Saturday. And the dog's still barking. Well, I can usually, as a turtle, just avoid it and absorb the pain and not confront, right? But when it starts bothering my wife, it's a different problem, right? So, okay, I got some skills, baby. I'm going to confront this. Well, I called my neighbor Joe, and I called him up on the phone and it went to voicemail, and I'm kind of glad it did because I wasn't really ready. I didn't leave a voice message. So then the next day I called him up and I said, Joe, can we talk about something I think is important to both of us? Now, you don't have to use those exact words, but I do. I use that all the time. Something of that nature. He said, hey, yeah, I'll be right over. He drove from his house, which is behind us, around the block to our front porch, and he came in and sat on my living room sofa with me. He was sitting on the sofa. I was sitting in a chair. And I said, Joe, it was last Friday night till it was after midnight, and Saturday night as well. And then again, it happened this weekend where Finn was out, he was barking, and it was till well after midnight. And Joe, that makes me wonder is if you guys are putting him up, or at night, or if you're just out of town, or I just don't know what's happening. Can you help me? And you could see his face just dropped, and he said, I am so sorry. He said, 2 weeks ago, Michelle took the kids and left me. And my whole life has just been falling apart. And I have been completely out of control with everything. Man, was I ever glad I chose to confront. We owe people that. But I did it in a way that he felt safe. And then I was able to walk with him through that difficult time because it was safe and we connected. So don't be afraid to confront. You see something out of line? Let that inner prophet well up inside you and use the skills, right? Okay, questions, thoughts? Time for questions. Time for comments. Time for additional insights. Yes.
Become defensive, even before you get the chance to ask the question.
If your partner becomes defensive, it didn't work. It doesn't mean the skill's invalid, but it means, again, the goal is safety. If you use a tool and safety is not accomplished, it's not going to work. So you keep your eyes on safety. How can I make it safe? And the more that my wife sees that I'm her advocate rather than her judge and her accuser, then the more that she's going to trust when hey, is this a good time to talk about something? Now she's very open to it because she knows I'm going to use skills that make it safe for her. Right? So if your spouse is defensive, start over. Just have to start over. It's not going to work. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have a question about facts. Okay. So if the facts are not accepted by the other half or partner or whatever, what do you do?
Okay, so you're just sharing from your perspective, right? You're sharing from your perspective. This is what I saw and heard. And so if your spouse says, it's interesting, I didn't see that and I didn't hear that. This is what I saw and heard. Now you're in a different level of discussion. So you use your mirroring skills. Say, so let me see if I got you. You said that you saw this way. Did I get it? Yeah. Is there more about that? So that you can validate your spouse. Remember the skill? Remember the dialogue skill where we validate, even though I don't agree with you. See? So, but if I say, hey, the last week you said you would be home for dinner at 6 and you came home on Tuesday at 20 minutes late and the next night on 15 minutes late and your spouse says, no, I didn't. I was only 10 minutes late. Then we're at a different level of talking, right? This is, we got to start over and maybe get some counseling at that point. Right? Or get someone to help walk you through that. Yes. Yeah. Right. Remember we talked about making an appointment. So always asking, is now a good time? And that way your partner can say, no, I'm busy. Because you don't want to catch them off guard and cause a reaction. You want to be able to have a dialogue. Yes. Okay. Good point. That appointment's worth its weight in gold. Yeah. Because it's a fundamental boundary issue of respecting someone's time and saying, is this a good time? And if you're both on the same page, hey, I want to learn these skills too. You want to learn them too. Then we can work together at it. Okay. Other questions or thoughts? Okay. So now with thinking about our marriage, what I want to do is I want to encourage you with something that happened to me recently. I was reading in the passage where Moses was in the wilderness tending sheep, and he was walking one day and he noticed a bush on fire. Right? And I understand from reading the history that's not uncommon. Sometimes in the desert, bushes would catch on fire. But he noticed something different about this one. And what does it say the next thing that happened? What's that? He turned aside. I don't know what you said. It wasn't burning up. Okay. He noticed he wasn't burning up. So it's strange, right? And the next thing says he turned aside. Sometimes the Lord is saying something to you about your partner. And is saying something to where He's speaking. And you're going along. And sometimes the way the Lord speaks to me, it's not like He's just standing in the road all of a sudden speaking. It's something happens on the side. Like the other day I was walking and I was praying about my marriage, praying about an issue that we had. And I saw a dove sitting on a wire. I saw another dove fly next to that dove and then take off, and the other dove flew after him and led him over to this other dove, which I have presumed was the female dove. And the Lord said, "You're seeking me, but I am leading you to her to deal with this issue." Now, I could say, oh, that was just a coincidence, right? Why are those thoughts in my head if that's a coincidence? The Lord is speaking, right? Now, here's the beautiful thing about when the Lord utters His word, there's all the power of creation in that word to empower me to do exactly what He calls me to do. He changed my heart in that moment toward my wife, you see? And I was kind of in that place of judgment and accusation. I was not in that place of advocacy. So I just want to encourage you, sometimes the Lord is speaking to you about your partner, and it's easy to miss it. I've seen this with pastors that I minister to. They're all about the ministry, but they haven't heard the word of the Lord about taking care of this issue here. What was it Tim was saying this morning? You know, I can have my garden well tended. You know, I can have my place well managed except for one area, right? And that's the area the Lord will speak to you about. He'll bring you back to your part. Maybe it's together. Some of you maybe need to come together with regard to what's happening with a child. You know, it's very common for one partner to be all about limits. This child needs limits. And the other partner, no, this child needs love. And the reality is they need limits and love, right? But one partner doesn't have the answer. It only comes when we establish mutual purpose. And everybody has a voice, right? Okay. Any more questions before I start launching into next week's mutual purpose discussion, right? Questions? Okay, let's pray. Father God, thank you for this time. And Lord, as I have been praying for this meeting and these couples, I just sensed in Venture, you're doing an amazing thing. As I have moved away from the area and I drove back this morning and I went to the service, I felt just an energy and something that's different. And Lord, I've been a part of that Monday, Wednesday, Friday prayer meeting for like 3 years. We've been praying for breakthrough. We've been praying for Venture, and we've been praying for couples. So, Lord, thank you for what you're doing in each of these couples. And I pray, Father, that we, just as I was sitting at my table and we were sharing about how we pray for Venture's couples so that this light on the hill right here could be a beacon of light to all of the Bay Area and to the nation and to the nations, Lord. So, Father, work in our marriages. Do what needs to be done. Father, strengthen us, encourage us, Lord, as we learn, go out with grace, recognizing that I got a brand new start today, and I can say to my wife, is this a good time to talk about something I haven't been addressing? I can talk to my husband and say, you know, the way I've been approaching you, I can see has not been helpful. Can we get on the same page in this way? So, Lord, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for Graham and Carla and for this team, for the amazing team, and for all of us participating together. We love you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it. So next week is going to be what topic? Tell us again. The power of mutual purpose. Continuing on what we've talked about here. We've got 8 or 10 minutes. Spend some time at your table, chat. What did you learn? What's the takeaway? What impressed you for today? And be an encouragement to each other. Look forward to seeing you next week.